You left me at home when we needed you most. You're such a coward. We all knew you were a coward.
Hey, wait!
Alright, I'll keep it brief for you guys so I don't ruin any of the story or, say, experience for you. So Dead Space 3 is a continuation of Dead Space 1 and 2, but you play as Clark Kent, Isaac Clarke, and or George Washington Carver, John Carter, no, John Carver, depending on if you play solo or co-op. The location and eminent setting for this game is the famously known planet Hoth.
It's not Hoth. It's Town of Atlantis.
Oh, Town of Atlantis, huh? Okay, yeah. Got it. The plot to all this is to actually help Ellie, Isaac's most recently separated honey boo boo, and his butt cheese of a boyfriend, Captain Robert Norton. Yeah. And to stop the Illuminati, unitologists from, say, wreaking havoc all over the universe and training everything into space STDs and, yeah. On the gameplay.
So Dead Space 3 is your typical third-person action shooter. For those that may have already played the previous Dead Space games, will definitely feel right at home for a lot of the old controls, the old kinesis, and the slowing the time down definitely comes back. For those that may have never played a Dead Space before, and this is your first one you're jumping in, that's okay, because it does definitely get you caught up on the story. But the best way I can describe it gameplay-wise is it plays very similar to like a Resident Evil 4 style shooting. Some of the newer things that have been added to the game that really is going to be a kind of a make it or break it depending on your style of play. Crafting is a huge thing in this game. The customization options for your weapons is enormous. You have many different customizations available through handles, tips, firing sequences. You can literally go nuts with this stuff and spend hours trying to create a gun that's going to basically get you from point A to point B. And as you progressively go through the game, you unlock more pieces, and so you always find yourself going back and forth to the bench and adding new stuff and new added bonuses like damage, reloading time faster, and such like that. Competitive multiplayer in the original Dead Space 2 is completely removed, but what is added to the game now is cooperative play. Now, I won't lie, I did not think that Dead Space and cooperative play was going to work very well. This game definitely does not take any of the fear factor in with it anymore. It is very much so a shoot 'em up, but as far as for those that the fear factor is gone, but the tense moments and frustration on the mobs that come at you Where in cooperative mode, that you're like, you're back to back, you're covering each other's backs as waves of enemies are coming at you, and boss fights are definitely not to be ignored on the levels of tense fights. As we have played almost practically the entire game in co-op, and the level of difficulty is definitely there. Even on a normal mode, we were having some pretty tough moments. But the biggest thing that the cooperative mode plays into this game is most cooperative kind of games like Army of Two and such like that, where your secondary character doesn't play a big role. He's kind of just there to just be a secondary player to help you in situations. This game takes it to the next level, which I find it very enjoyable. One player plays Isaac, the other one plays John Carver. Now, John Carver's story is not told up front. You progressively find out who he is as you go through. But players in general, if one person plays Isaac, the other one plays John, they're going to see things that the other player can't see. If you play John, there's times where John just trips out like crazy, and the person that's playing Isaac can't see what the secondary player is seeing. He just sees the character just tripping out and running off doing his own thing. It definitely leaves that sense of suspense on where is this guy going, what are we going to get ourselves into, leading you into the unknown for sure. Alrighty guys, so that's it for the gameplay. I'm going to turn it for our first time. I've really been wanting these guys on the show, but we're actually going to do our first long distance review, so I'm going to shoot it towards B4RRY M4DIKKIN and RAMSEYCOKINN3R up in Canada. So, take it away guys.
What's up guys, B4RRY M4DIKKIN and RAMSEYCOKINN3R in here, your Canadian connection for all things Dead Space. What's up Ramsey, how you doing buddy?
Too bad, Barry. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm pumped to be playing the next installment of Dead Space. A little history on Ramsey and I. We've been through Dead Space, the whole thing. The movies, the games, we are it. And we are stoked to be bringing you this review on Dead Space 3. So Ramsey, what were your first impressions on the story?
Well, it definitely reached a lot farther than the last two. I believe the scope is a lot bigger. I believe that the beginning was definitely Dead Space. It definitely brought you back into the space. It brought you back into flying through space and going into the spaceships, tight corridors. I think it was a really solid story in the end.
Yep, I totally agree. I feel like Isaac was truly Isaac. They didn't change a whole lot of that. I really enjoyed the story. It definitely had some twists and turns, but overall I was relatively happy with it. So, how did it feel for you? Was it fun to play? What'd you think?
I don't think there was very much that they changed in the gameplay. It's typical Dead Space. The only real difference I found was the weapon crafting system. It absolutely changed the scope of the game. It no longer was you basically using tools. It was, you can take guns, you can take tools, you can put them together. It was a completely different system, and I felt that it made you more of a tank. It made you more unbeatable, I guess you could say. You never really had that fear anymore when you walked into a room, because you had this massive weapon that shot two different things, and you had a whole lot of ammo to back it up. You had universal ammo, which I believe felt right at home with the way they changed it up, but made it also incredibly easy to stay pretty much full of ammo and full of medic. Well, the amount of enemies that you face is drastically ramped up from the last two games. I mean, there were a number of times. One part in particular, it was a side mission for the armory, and just going down into a room, it was completely dark. You enter the room, and you just all these black, skinny creatures. They all look at you, and you just get bum rushed by them. And I think there must have been at least 15 in there, and once they all get killed with about 1 or 2 shots. They're pretty simple, but the more you kill them, the more they kept coming, and it definitely ramped up with the amount of enemies that you face.
Absolutely. In this game. Good point. Another thing for me was the number of ridiculously large boss battles, and I'm not talking length, I mean size of the actual boss. They only had one really big one. I was kind of hoping for 2 or 3. That's kind of a signature thing that Dead Space did that I felt like And even the one that they had, I felt like they just threw it in because they needed to have a huge monster to fight.
Yes, there were different sizes throughout the other Dead Spaces, and there really was only one that you can really mention other than the final boss. There really was only, one.
Absolutely. What other things bothered you about the game?
I would have to say the cover system that they put in was incredibly useless. I found it came in handy, I guess you could say, maybe once or twice when you run into the human unitologists, but I didn't even use it that much. Most of the human unitologists just kind of stand there. There really isn't a need for it, and I found the rolling to be rather pointless. I never used it when I was surrounded by necromorphs. I think I maybe did it once by accident, and it just rolled me into a necromorph, and I got diced up. So I found that the cover system and the rolling were pointless. They were taken from, better games.
No, I agree. I found that the only time I used cover as well was when I was facing humans, but even then, on hard difficulty, their accuracy is so good, it doesn't make a difference whether you're in cover or not.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that bothered me was I feel like the dismemberment, shooting specifically for the arms and legs, was a little less focused on. I feel like it was more about how much damage your guns could do rather than where specifically you were shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. The staple of Dead Space, the one that's the staple that set it apart from any other game out there, was the fact that you couldn't just blindly fire at these things. You had to take their limbs out, take them apart one by one, and in this game it's more about, you got your machine guns, and it's more about just blasting away. And I found even when I was shooting their limbs off, sometimes just hitting them in the chest would take a limb off that I wasn't even aiming at. I really think that they stepped back from what made the franchise great, which was that strategic dismemberment.
Yeah.
Was picking your shots and, conserving your ammo so you had the shots to do that.
So, overall, scale of 1 to 10, what do you give it?
I'd give it a 8.5. I think they turned their backs on the fear by adding the crafting system. Like I said, walking around as a tank, it really doesn't leave much for fear. When you walk into a room, you're really not afraid because you're going to blast everything away. But I think everything else was still kept in the way it should have been, and I thought it was a really good game.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm also on the 8.5 level. It felt like Dead Space. It's tough because I feel like the crafting system doesn't completely derail the game, but it doesn't do a lot to help it. I'm definitely going to say, in the end, it's a good game. It may have a few tweaks here and there. I may see it as flawed a little bit, but overall, it's still a good Dead Space game.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, really appreciate you tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Later. This is Corporal Michael Friesen of the Sovereign Colonies Armed Forces, broadcasting on all frequencies. Tavalantis is a lost cause. We found something. Something in the ice. Colony's gone. Over Rumbo, it used to be our friends. They aren't the people they were. They've changed. A nightmare. I'm one of the last survivors. If you're hearing this, if you're receiving this, don't come here. This planet is lost. This is Corporal Michael Friesen of the Sovereign Colonies Armed Forces. Signing off.